Well, it is Monday. There is a thunderstorm starting outside, and I am dressed like this. That can only mean one thing. I'm here to talk about Frankenstein again. As you guys know from the majority of my social media for the last few weeks, I have been... what's the word? Mildly obsessive about this film ever since I first went to see the exhibition in London. It was incredible, it was amazing. I knew nothing about the film until I went, so I was going in completely blind. I went around this exhibition mostly as a costume maker and a just lover of practical effects, and seeing all of these puppets and costumes and just learning about how beautifully sumptuous and how well crafted this film was, that was enough to get me interested enough to go and watch it. I went to see it at the cinema because it wasn't going to be released on Netflix for a few weeks, and I am nothing if not an impatient Aries, so I went immediately to my closest cinema, which took some doing because it wasn't in every cinema. Oh no, it was only in specific ones. I found one, I travelled there, I went to go and watch it late one night in a very crowded theatre. And by the way, massive fuck you to the two people who spent the entire movie in front of me just making out with each other. There was literal art happening in front of you, and that's all you decided to do? Anyway, I don't have time for this. So, I went and watched it, fell in love with this film, thought it was incredible. And also while this was happening, I scraped together the very last of my money, and I am now going to be living on baked beans for the rest of the year. And I bought this, the companion book, essentially, to this film. It is so beautiful, it is huge, it is already covered in sticky notes. As anyone who watches my Peter Pan content will know, I'm a big fan of covering my books in sticky notes. Unfortunately, I can't crack the spine on this as much as I usually would because it is hardback, but it is beautiful. It still smells of a new book. And I have been referencing this a lot while I was watching the film again when I got to see it on Netflix, where, beautiful of beautiness, I can pause it and keep going. The third time I went to see it in the cinema, I took a notebook and I was writing the whole way through. I have enjoyed this film that much. Also, I will say the same thing to you guys as I said to everyone on my Instagram and my TikTok. If you want to have a look at this book, I will probably do a whole video where I just go through it page by page, because I was lucky enough that I could scrape together money to buy it. Loads of people will not be able to get it though, so if you want to have a closer look, there have already been a few cosplayers who've messaged me and said, can you send me more pictures of XYZ costume or this prop or whatever? And yes, absolutely. I took a stupid amount of pictures and video while I was there at the exhibition, and there is also loads in here as well. So if you want anything in particular, let me know and I will send it to you, because hell, we don't gatekeep in this house. Essentially what I've now got is at least 10 different topics I want to talk about in different videos. In the last video I sent out on Halloween, I gave you sort of snapshots and snippets and essentially bullet points of a bunch of different ideas, and I sort of threw them out of the wall to see what stuck. And I did talk about what I'm going to talk about mostly in this video as well, but in slightly less detail. What I want to talk about first is what I'm going to talk about in this video, which is called the Red, the Dies Irae. But after that, I've got so many other topics, including that flipped scene at the end. What did that mean? And themes of morality and fatherhood and parenthood and generational trauma and color coding and costuming and sets and props and just so many different things. So stay tuned, because that is pretty much what this channel is going to turn into for the next few weeks. I have a lot to say, I've written a lot about it. Yeah, you're just gonna have to sit down, buckle up and enjoy. I am gonna put up my making my Molly Mork vlog though, so you know, there's that to look forward to as well, because, you know, with the world of Frankenstein and the craziness, there is also Critical Role coming out, so we have to jump onto that as well because we just love it so much. So today what I'm going to talk about is Red as the Dies Irae, meaning it foreshadows death, darkness and gloom. And also, in this case, grief-driven madness, spreading and affecting those near it. I'll go through this in fairly chronological order, starting from the beginning of the film and going all the way to the end, but I do really want to start with Victor's early childhood, so I'm going to just very quickly touch on the beginning of the film and then move swiftly on to that. Because his early childhood is where the madness and this entire hypothesis comes from, where the red comes from. Now, at the beginning of the film, the colours are deliberately chosen. They are sort of whites and golds and sort of pale yellows and grey blues. You've got the ice in the Arctic, the ship, the Horizon, you've got all the sailors in their sort of ice-covered snowy outfits, and even the ship itself. There's not a great deal of other colours, and these are the two bookends. You've got the sort of pale, white, sort of bluey colours with the little touches of gold on the sunrise at the very beginning and the very, very end. We go back into Victor's childhood, and the colours chosen for that were reds, whites, and blacks. And then as we go through the story, you slowly add more and more colour until we get back to the very end of the film again, when we revert back to the golds and the whites and the blues. So at the beginning of the film, we have this stuck and stranded ship's crew. They are stuck in the ice. They then hear this massive explosion. They see fire. They hear noises. They run across the ice. They go and find a camp, and they go and find the very critically wounded Victor Frankenstein. They find all the husky dogs. And the first time we see any red at all in this film is when Victor enters the story. It's the blood next to his camp just before they find him. It's not his blood, but we don't discover that until later on. So the first and only hint of red that we get in this huge white, gold and blue Arctic space comes from Frankenstein himself. We then learn all about his story and we widdly-woo backwards in time, and then we're back in his youth. Now, this absence of red, with the exception of when Frankenstein is introduced into the story in the blood, is very, very important for the hypothesis I have about red as the Dies Irae, because even the ship's captain, to whom Frankenstein himself says, "You share my madness," which is a really important thing that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on as we go through, despite telling him he shares his madness, the captain doesn't wear any red, which is a hint to later on, spoiler alert, although if you're watching this video, you probably should know the story of Frankenstein and what this film was all about. Spoiler alert for later on, the captain, while sharing Frankenstein's madness, this drive, this hunger, this egotistical drive at all costs, nothing is more important than doing what I set out to do, and everything that falls by the wayside is just unimportant. I'm going to keep doggedly going despite everyone around me saying stop. He ends up not doing what Frankenstein did, and so actually he overcomes that madness, and so that's why I think he isn't wearing any red, because while he is touched by the same sort of ambition, it doesn't actually end up driving him to destruction. By the end of the story, he turns around and takes his men home. He overcomes it. So that's my hypothesis for the captain and why he doesn't wear any red, because while he is touched by the madness, as Frankenstein notes, he doesn't actually get consumed by it, so he isn't wearing red. But now let's journey backwards with Victor and his story into the past and delve into the very beginnings of his madness in his youth. As we go to the child Victor, the first character we actually see is his mother. Now she is an elegant and lovely woman, a sweeping figure dressed in all red. It is a long flowing gown with a veil and gloves. This veil flutters around her, making her look ghostly even in life. This was a deliberate choice. Costume designer Kate Hawley said, "The mother is almost an illusion. There's always a bit of a dream in Del Toro's work." We also see, as the mother stands outside, as Victor's father walks towards them as he arrives home, that her red veil flows in the wind, making it look like blood pouring from the doctor's hands as we see him from the back. This is another sneaky peek of foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is a full video I'm going to do an essay on, so the little snippets of foreshadowing I'm going to talk about here, I'll do in much more detail later on in another video. I also noticed that on the white marble columns of the house, some of them have streaks of a darker marble going through them, and it sort of looks like blood streaks and flecks in the marble. Maybe this house is going to be a house of death and somehow very, very important later on. Hint, hint, that's exactly what happens. At this point, Victor himself wears no red. He is in black and white. We see red in his world in the colours of his four-poster bed, predominantly in the colours of his mother, and in the angel statue to which he prays. There is red in his father though, which he presses onto the mother. He sits in a red-backed chair, he forces her to eat red blood-soaked bread for nutrients for her as she is eating for two, being heavily pregnant. She is still wearing her red dress, her red outfit, and reluctantly as the mother eats the blood-soaked bread, she dribbles red blood down the side of her face. And this, of course, is an indicator of soon she will be coughing up her own blood as she meets her demise. Again, spoilers! And indeed, soon we see her sitting down with her son, still adorned in reds, while he wears no red. And they're playing cards until, fatefully, surrounded by those white marble walls that have those streaks of almost red blood splatters through them, with a red carpet underneath them, the mother starts coughing, she coughs up blood, she grabs onto her son, who rushes to go and get her father, who then takes her away in an attempt to save her life and the baby. We then cut back to Victor, who is completely distraught over what is happening. He knows his mother's in pain, we can hear her screaming, and we see that she's left a blood streak on the side of his face. And very crucially and importantly, the first piece of red that Victor Frankenstein wears in this story is a red, bloody handprint left on his right shoulder by his mother. And that red touch from his mother sparks this madness in him, which is my hypothesis for the Dies Irae. Death, but not just death, but also a symbol of Victor's madness. The madness that drives him to try to defy the gods because he thinks that God has done wrong, God was incorrect by taking away his mother. And that grief and anguish over his mother and that mourning, that missing her that he doesn't know what to do with. He runs away from the funeral and describes that everything in his world has gone dark. The stars, everything is gone. His mother, his safe place, his everything is gone. and he doesn't know how to deal with that. And the entire rest of his life is just him attempting to deal with his grief in increasingly more and more terrible ways. So when I say the madness of Victor Frankenstein, that's what I mean. It's grief-driven, turned and twisted into this madness and obsession to conquer death, not just to beat his father, but also to try in some strange way to beat the death of his mother, maybe somehow bring her back, but most importantly to stop the hurt, to stop that grief from just existing within him, which of course you can't conquer grief. That's not how that works. But Victor Frankenstein doesn't seem to care about that. So the bloody handprint is the first sign of this madness starting to affect him, and that red stays with him through the rest of his costume choices through the film. The next scene that we see after the bloody handprint is the mother's funeral. It opens with the mother's tomb, where we can see her in this beautiful sort of white marble, but then you can see her face inside of it, and she is wreathed in these sort of red, beautiful florals going around her, almost like a bonnet. Remember the word bonnet, with red florals going around her face. We'll come back to that later. And then she is covered over and she's laid to rest in the ground. At this point, Victor Frankenstein is wearing red. His first bit of red after the red handprint. The madness has started to set in. It's the red neckerchief. He was touched by the red bloody handprint, his mother has died, the madness has started to set in, the grief has started to twist within him. He wears the red neckerchief from her funeral onwards, and that is a very crucially important part of his costuming. I went back and triple checked. He does not wear that before his mother dies. Victor goes on to describe, as the scenes continue, how an idea started to form. Inevitable, unavoidable, until it became truth. Now, later on, Elizabeth says to him that believing in something does not make it true, and she speaks of how dangerous ideas pursued by fools can be. And as ever through this film, Elizabeth just reads Victor like a book, because that is just it, isn't it? It's an idea pursued by a fool. This entire thing is an idea pursued by a fool, and the idea came to be because of this madness and grief over his mother. He describes it as unavoidable. Maybe it's his weird way of calling it fate. He was always fated to do this terrible thing because his mother died. And I mean, in the world of literature and character, I suppose that's true. It's a bit like how in Hadestown, they're always fated to lose, because to love her is to turn around. And if you didn't turn around, you wouldn't love her enough. So in this, maybe Victor never loves enough to stop doing what he is doing. So a call to fate there, perhaps, in his inevitable madness and demise. The idea begins with Victor confronting his father about letting his mother die. The father says no one can conquer death, but Victor becomes obsessed with this idea that his father was the best surgeon of the age, and his mother still died, and if the best of the best couldn't save her, then he is going to be better. He is going to be better than his father, and he tells his father that he is going to do it. He is going to conquer death. He's going to know everything his father knows and more. So this is it, the beginning, this madness taking hold, this idea that won't leave him. It is madness gripping him like the redness, the red of the bloody handprint of his mother that gripped onto his shoulder. It's gripping, it's taken hold, and it will not let go. I'm enjoying this hypothesis, can you tell? At the funeral, Victor even runs away with his red neckerchief, and he starts to cry on a red couch underneath a painting where a red-clad figure is, and he's bathed in light shining through from red curtains. His world is turning red. His madness is taking hold. I enjoy this. And then Victor has his first dream of what he calls the Dark Angel. Now, complete side note for a second to mention that this was a person in a costume, and I love that so much. It would have been so quick to just go, yeah, we'll CGI that, but they didn't. They made a whole costume, and that makes me so happy because so much of this film is just practical effects. But that's another video. We're going to talk all about the practical effects in another video, but I just wanted to add that right now. Practical effects for the win. Okay, so Victor has his first dream of the Dark Angel. Guess what color it is? I will give you 3 guesses. It's red! We've seen this statue before, and another thing I want to point out about this statue is that it has a crack going down its forehead, and this is mirrored in the creature design later on. But again, that's for another video. Today we're talking about red. So, red statue, red Dark Angel. And again, he wakes up in his red 4-poster bed with the red wood and the red curtains and the red blanket. And as he wakes up, something fun to notice is that his brother William is lying with him in this bed. Now, William isn't wearing red, but he is clutching tight onto the red blanket. And I'm gonna choose to see that this symbolizes symbolises that while William doesn't share his brother's madness, he does still cling on to his brother and will be affected by it. More on this a little bit later on. Next up comes their father's funeral, and after this, Victor has another piece of red on him. It's his red gloves, and we see him wearing these through most of the rest of the story as well. And a fun tidbit about the red gloves that I found while reading this is that the red gloves used to be his mother's, which is another big tie-in to my hypothesis of red as the Dies Irae, not just a symbol of death, but a symbol of that madness which came from his mother's death. His mother's bloody handprint, his mother's death. It's all about the mother, and the gloves were hers. I sort of rest my case here. This was the first note I put in this book, actually, as I was reading through. I noticed right here, it says, you probably can't read it, so I'll put a picture up for you. It says, the red gloves Victor wears were his mother's, and I circled that, put an immediate note on it, and went, yes! Continues to be worth the money I paid for it every damn day. Then we move into the future, and Victor is giving his presentation. So an older adult Victor is giving his presentation to benches of onlookers. He has with him the sort of first puppeted version of that creature, talking more about the puppeted version of that creature in another video, because puppets and practical effects, chef's kiss amazing. Now, what is he wearing in this crucial scene? Well, he is wearing that red neckerchief. That is the biggest and most important symbol, the red neckerchief. That is still on him. He is wearing it, that madness is still within him, that madness that came, that first one, that neckerchief that came right after the bloody red handprint from his mother, and this grief and this madness is still with him. So he's wearing the red neckerchief as he gives his presentation to everybody. He is also holding a red ball. There's also red in the batteries that he uses to power the creature. There is also red in the wires he uses to attach the batteries to the creature. There is arguably red in the organs and the blood of the insides of this creature that he is trying to make move and operate. But most importantly, that red neckerchief is still on him. All these items he is using because of his madness to try to conquer death because of the death of his mother. Then we are introduced to the marvelously gold-souled shoed Harlander, who at first glance doesn't appear to have any red on him, but spoiler alert again, little do we know he's hiding a secret red inwardly and on the outside. But we are told that he does share some of Victor's madness, even though we can't see red on him. We know within a few moments of meeting his character that he is going to share in Victor's madness, and he is going to be a huge part of this whole story, and very importantly, he is probably going to die. How do we know this when he isn't wearing any red? Well, he catches the red ball. Victor throws it, and Harlander catches it, holds onto it, and then goes to speak to Victor and becomes a very important part of the story. That red ball representing that red madness that Victor has within him, and he is spreading it to those around him who are also enabling him to spread it, and that is what Harlander is doing. He catches the red ball, he's catching that madness and encouraging it and igniting it within himself and in Victor. Harlander's mad too, and he's going to die. We go on to see more red in Harlander's world as well. When we go to his house, we see that he is interested in taking pictures and doing photography. He is taking his version of a Memento Mori, which is a Latin reminder that you have to die, often symbolized with a skull and flowers, and in Harlander's scene, a beautiful woman is holding a peach near a skull and flowers, and this is framed in red. Red curtains, red again. Harlander, you are beginning to be rippled through with it, and soon we will find out why. At this point, I would like to make a little bit of a comparison between the red neckerchief and the red gloves. Now, the neckerchief, I'm going to say, represents something slightly different, while the two of them together represent the madness and the grief. Because he wore the neckerchief first, and this was the first thing he added to himself, the first splash of red we got after the red bloody handprint and his mother's death, I'm saying that the red of the neckerchief is going to represent Victor's grief itself, and the gloves represent his desire to conquer death. Both together they mean the same, but when they're apart, I think they can mean slightly different things. Interesting to note that Victor was not wearing the gloves when he was giving his demonstration, because he wasn't working on the creature. He wasn't working to defeat death. He was showing what he had done. And that egotistical side of it, leaning into the grief of his mother being there, that grief, that presence sort of hanging on him like a hanged man. And we do see hanged man later on, so maybe that's a sort of thing to parallel. Anyway, the red neckerchief being there at that point is because he's not physically working on it. I think it's because the mother's grief is what's driving him, this desire to conquer death and bring her back somehow to, conquer that grief in his own mind. Whereas when he's actively working on defeating death, that's when he has the gloves on. Partly because, he's working with blood and gore, and partly symbolism. I'm choosing to see it that way anyway. So, the neckerchief is for the mother, the gloves are for death. Altogether, they are the madness of Victor Frankenstein. Let's carry on then. Remember those red curtains that Harlander had around his scene of the Memento Mori? Well, they are important in just a moment when we get introduced to the character of Elizabeth. We also get introduced to the grown-up character of William, which is Frankenstein's brother. Now, Elizabeth, when we first meet her, is not wearing any red, which is very interesting, particularly involving this hypothesis of red being the Dies Irae and marking people for death. However, Elizabeth is still touched by that red. She doesn't have the same madness as Victor Frankenstein, but she does have something in parallel with him, a morbidity, a curiousness, a delving beyond this world. She herself later on says that her place was never in this world. There is something different about her, and red does still symbolize that within the character of Elizabeth. How do we know this when we first meet her? Well, for two reasons. One of the reasons is red, and one of the reasons is she's holding a literal skull. Like, it's proper Hamlet. She is holding this skull. It's very Shakespearean. And she is holding that skull from the Memento Mori picture. And what we also see is her immediately framed by those red curtains. She's probably going to die, and she probably has something about her that's interested in the same world of the morbid and beyond that Victor is interested in, but for very different reasons. William, his brother, is not in red in this scene though, because he is still completely unaffected by the madness that took his brother. Later on, as Victor and Harlander and his brother William are travelling to the tower where he's going to start building this creature and this madness is going to take hold, the inside of the carriage itself is also red. Perhaps this is a warning. They are travelling towards the madness, encouraging this plan that will end in suffering and death. Victor is also wearing his red gloves and the red neckerchief as they explore the tower. His madness and grief and morbid ambition are in full sway here. The grief driving that madness, driving that desire to defeat death, all this planning, everything. Yeah, it's all very red at this point. It's all very prevalent in his character. Then Victor is examining criminals about to be hanged. Again, that hanged parallel with that grief dragging around his neck, dragging him down like a hanged man's noose. So he wears those red gloves, but he's not wearing the neckerchief in this scene. He's acting for himself, not for his mother. It is instead being overtaken by his desire to conquer death and to craft this creature. Perhaps even very subconsciously, he doesn't want to wear something that symbolizes his mother and that grief to him because he knows his mother wouldn't want this. I'm probably reading far too much into this, but it's great fun to do so we're going to carry on. Victor is not wearing that symbol of grief, but he is wearing his red gloves when he is literally dealing with men about to die, who he's planning to cut up and turn into a creature. And then, through the rain and the drizzle and the bustling market, Victor sees a red umbrella. Who is holding this red umbrella? It is Elizabeth, of course. And that is not the only touch of red that we see upon her. As he follows her and then they end up sitting down together and eating together, she is also wearing her red cross necklace. This red umbrella and this red cross necklace, her ties to death are always there. And that red necklace is something she wears pretty much in every single scene from then on. And it also shows that little hint that she is always going to be slightly drawn to that macabre and death and strange and other. Again, she doesn't share the same madness as Victor Frankenstein, but the more they talk, the more their sort of worlds intertwine a little bit, and he seems to sort of almost smudge her through with this red, which we do see more in her costumes. It also is marking her for death, sadly. Now, as Victor and Elizabeth sit down to talk, Victor is not wearing his red neckerchief, and he's also removed his gloves. And he actually describes in his voiceover that, for the very first time, I became more interested in life. Now, this doesn't last for very long, because the gloves are back on again as he works on the creature in his workshop, but nonetheless, they are still off while he is talking to and attempting to woo/befriend Elizabeth. Her touch of red on the necklace is still there, but Victor's are all absent. While he is still being a little manipulative in the way that Elizabeth recognises, and even William recognises later on, he isn't doing it for the grief of his mother, and he isn't doing it to try to conquer death. It's for himself, sure, but almost for the first time it's for himself, and not driven out of this madness. So the gloves are back on as Victor is trying to craft the creature again. The neckerchief is back on as he goes to examine the manufacturing of the equipment for the tower. So while very fleetingly he may have been distracted by life, his true ambitions remain and remain always the same. He does return to them time and time again. The red neckerchief of grief and the red gloves of defeating death. His madness is still within him and he can't escape it for very long. Also, something fun that I only spotted on my second and third viewing is I think we finally see a touch of red in William. And this is at the point where he is getting left behind to supervise and make sure all the equipment is getting put into the tower and built correctly, and he is acting in his brother's stead. Now, this is for selfish reasons for his brother, because Victor is going back to, you know, hang out with Elizabeth and leaving William. But nonetheless, William is still doing it. He agrees, and he is acting in his brother's place. He is walking in Victor Frankenstein's footsteps, essentially walking in the path of his madness and helping it to come true. And so it's interesting to note that the touch of red I spotted on William in this moment is on his boots. They're sort of a dark browny red. You can sort of see it in different lights. They look different shades of red, but nonetheless, it's the first time I feel like we've seen red on this character. And so finally, we are seeing him being bitten by the madness of his brother, not because he feels it in the same way, but because he's enabling it to happen. He is enabling the path of madness and destruction and death that Victor Frankenstein has set in motion. That red neckerchief, those red gloves, and now the red has spread onto his brother William in his boots as he walks this path and enables Victor Frankenstein's madness to continue. Maybe I'm reaching, but it's fun to do so. Next, we see Victor Frankenstein himself wearing a lot of red, the most red we've seen him wearing so far. Interestingly though, the gloves and the neckerchief are absent, so he's not completely focused on his grief or his obsession with conquering death anymore. And actually this fits, because it's in his distraction with Elizabeth. She is playing the piano, they've all watched it, Harlander is there, a big group of people are there, and Victor is wearing this big red sort of, I think they're called smoking jackets, I might be wrong though because I'm not a historical costume maker, but it's a big red jacket and it's gorgeous, and it looks sort of velvety, and that means I can't touch it because velvet makes my back teeth go itchy, but it is still a huge, big piece of red, the biggest piece of red on his costuming we've seen so far. Even when he was covered in blood, he's never been this red before. He is a danger to those around him. He touches Elizabeth on the shoulder. She is definitely going to be affected by this. We know it for definite at this point. Her Dies Irae, her days are numbered. She is sealed. Her fate is sealed. She is going to die. Who does he speak to next? Harlander. Harlander speaks to him in the toilet, and he's telling him that he is going to pull away his funding and he's not going to support him anymore, and all in this red, 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 red. Again, I might be reading way too much into it, but it's great fun to do so let's carry on. And then, still in his distracted state, Elizabeth pays Victor Frankenstein a visit. And Victor is wearing no gloves and no neckerchief. Once again, much like when they go on their sort of dates to see butterflies, he's not wearing them anymore. He's focused and distracted with the living, but that madness is within him and it's not going to go away, so the red comes back very, very soon. Number one, we see red as he opens the door. There is a portrait of his mother clad in red on the wall. And this is a big hint as to who is going to be on the other side of the door as well, because he opens the door and it's Elizabeth. And remember that bonnet I talked about earlier? It's coming back because Elizabeth is wearing a bonnet and it makes her face look as though it's surrounded by red flowers, like the tomb of his mother. The red going around her face in a bonnet style that makes it look like she's surrounded by flowers. Elizabeth, played by the same actress, and we've just seen the portrait of the mother on the wall clad in red, appears at his door with the red flowers around her face looking like the tomb of his mother. Also, the dress she's wearing is now completely red. She herself has been sort of taken in a bit by Frankenstein. She's allowed their relationship to develop to the point where it's dangerous. She is all in red. Victor's red has infected her too. She has realized this. She has missed him. She brings the butterfly and she ends up doing a speech about not having choice, and she has made her choice and she chooses to leave him, and she leaves that red behind. And the last time we see Elizabeth completely clad in red like this is this scene. She does make that choice. She leaves the red, the madness behind as much as she can, but unfortunately she's been touched by it and she's still going to die, but she has left that all-consuming madness of getting caught up in this almost relationship with her fiance's brother, and she leaves him with that. But her being in complete red in this scene and being foreshadowed by the mother in the painting, hugely important moment, I think. And then Victor is back in his red gloves and his red neckerchief again, and he is selecting bodies from a battlefield. He is fully back in it, in the madness, in the red. He had a moment where he was completely naked when he first made the creature start to move, and that is a parallel to the Garden of Adam and Eve and the Garden of the Forbidden Fruit and all that, and the Garden of, what's it called? Eden. And that's a parallel to the Garden of Eden that I'm going to draw in the parallels video, so put a pin in that and remember to come back and talk about naked Oscar Isaac, because it's important in my video about parallels. Anyway, as he sets to work in the tower, beginning to dismember all of these bodies, he tugs and removes his neckerchief. that big tie to the grief of his mother, that first thing we saw that's been with him pretty consistently all the time since, even when he wasn't wearing the gloves, that neckerchief has been there, but now he takes it off. This truly is no longer about the mother. Even subconsciously, she has left his mind as he delves into his own egotistical desires to beat death. He is still wearing the gloves. He is trying to create a life. The red gloves remain on as he works, as he cuts and saws and forms his creature. He's also wearing these really marvellous trousers in a sort of deep, almost tartan pattern in this rich, dark, almost crimson. So there's red there as well, and the blood red splatters all over his apron and his shirt as he works. He even gets blood stains down his face as he wipes them with his gloves and things. So the red gloves are on because he is working on this desperate desire to conquer death, but the connection to his mother is gone at this point. It is now completely just for him. When it is finished, as Victor says, the creature is complete, he has sewn it all together, everything is done, everything is prepared, he pulls off the red gloves. And I see this as a sign that he is done with his desire to conquer death for the moment, because he's built the creature. That big thing he's been working towards, it's done. So he takes the gloves off because it's almost a but of course they go immediately back on again because a lightning storm strikes. And it's destiny calling, and it's fate calling, and it's temptation calling, and it's madness calling, and he could have stopped. He could have not done it. He could have stopped there, and maybe he could. Maybe there's a universe where Victor Frankenstein could have resisted that call back to madness. He could have resisted the lightning storm. He could have buried the creature he had built and never tried to give it life at all. But I think it's unlikely. He takes off the red gloves, but there is still red around him, not just in the batteries and everything ready for the creation of the creature. He's also stained with the blood. He also goes to see Harlander, and he witnesses the red on the man's head underneath his wig, where it's been hiding. His illness, his disease, his own madness. And we find out the reason why Harlander caught that red ball, because he has that madness in him for a slightly different reason, is that he's dying. He's dying and he wants to have that eternal life. He wants to be put into the creature, and Victor and he get into an argument and a back and forth about it, that madness shared, coming to the same conclusion but for two different reasons. Their trains on different tracks, heading to crash at the same destination. I then noticed that it looks as though the boxes that are containing the silver parts of the lightning rod, they seem red too, or at least a dark sort of reddish wood. And as Victor climbs up onto the spire of the tower, very biblical imagery there, and we'll get into that in the biblical imagery video that I'm going to make. There's just so much in this film, guys. And technically he's got the red blood stains and the red trousers on, those fantastic red trousers, as he argues with Harlander, who caught that red ball, who has that madness, and they fight, and that red case is caught around Harlander's foot as he falls, and he denies Victor what he wants, and the two fight. And then of course he's still wearing the red gloves as Harlander falls like a sacrifice at the feet of the creature who is standing there like a crucified Jesus. Death is here. That red is here. And you could almost see the red gloves as the blood on Victor's hands as well, because while he didn't push Harlander, he is part of this madness. He has caused all of these events to take place. Harlander's death is really on him. Red of the room, of the lights, of the batteries, everything flashing. It's death, and it's here, surrounding this poor creature who is about to be given life because of death. When Victor believes that he has failed, his creature, his experiment, his everything has failed, he goes defeated to his bedroom. He pulls off his white shirt and he is left completely in red. He falls into bed in the red gloves, in the red trousers, in red sheets, with red wood, with red curtains. Next to him is that red dark angel statue. Everything is red. He dreams of the dark angel. He dreams of flames and fire. Everything is red. But he is not wearing that neckerchief because it's no longer about his mother. And really and truly, while she was the catalyst, it hasn't been about his mother for a long time. And then when he wakes up, the creature's there. As Victor wakes, he examines the creature and he removes his gloves. He has no need of them now. He has achieved the goal. And for now, for that brief moment, it's good. While the novelty has not yet worn off, though it very soon will, the red can go. That desire, that anger, that all-consuming madness, it's still within him, but it's completely dimmed. And he takes the gloves off because he doesn't need to try to conquer death anymore. He's done it. And for that tiny, tiny brief window where he opens those curtains and he says, "Son, son," and he shows the creature some semblance of care, we get just a little brief respite, and possibly so does Victor, where he isn't dogged by that madness and that red, just for a little while. The gloves and the neckerchief remain off as Victor leads the creature down into the cell, but he does wrap the creature in a red blanket, saying it's going to keep him warm. Of course, the blanket that Victor offers is red. One, he doesn't seem to own any other colour on his bedding at all, but two, it's red because it's Victor. He is still all consumed by that madness, but most importantly, that madness is spreading to everyone else. But interestingly, and I will hold on to this for the rest of this video, the creature cannot wear red, and doesn't wear red. He very quickly shrugs off the blanket as Victor Frankenstein starts to leave and the creature goes to come after him, and never again is he seen wearing it. The creature cannot and does not wear any red, because while he was created from this madness, he carries none of it in him. Also, crucially, he cannot die, and so that red Dies Irae will never mark him, because it can't. He's never going to die, and so he is completely devoid of any red. And Victor realizes he never considered what would come after creation. He still isn't wearing the gloves of overcoming and conquering death, or the neckerchief of grief for his mother, and both are unimportant now, in a way. The grief has not been destroyed, and his desire to conquer death has faded. He has reached the horizon and has nothing left. That red madness led him here, and now what? The doors to the tower itself are red too here, which I noticed properly when he rushes to go and see Elizabeth and William arriving. And so the tower too has now become Victor's prison. He has been not sleeping, not eating, he's been caring for the creature and still, well, caring for the creature, still not wearing the red. No neckerchief, no gloves, nothing. The only red we really see is in the scarring on the creature and the blood that comes from his hands. He is trapped in this tower, this madness of his own making. It's spread out now all the way to the doors itself, locking him in, keeping him in, and with the novelty fading and his tiredness and his irritation and anger, and with the creature that he now loathes. So William and Elizabeth at this point are just a little bit red too. William's boots, once again, he seems to be walking his brother's path. He's even carrying a folder that seems to be in red, and I think the red of his bow tie stands out as well just a little bit. Elizabeth is still wearing her red cross necklace with almost red blood-stain patterns in her greeny yellow dress. This was in fact a design choice by the team. I read that they used insects and x-rays and blood cells as inspiration when crafting the patterns for her costumes. So Elizabeth has a connection to death and to the creature still very apparent, whereas William's red is in the boots because he is walking the path of his brother. He is affected by his brother, whereas Elizabeth is connected to the creature. As Victor shows the creature to Elizabeth and William, his gloves and neckerchief are still absent. Again, he does not know what to do now. Cruelty is coming out in him. He's very similar to his father in the way that he's treating the creature. He calls him it a lot. Elizabeth calls him him. He calls him it. We see red again inside Victor's long night robe. At first, it appears to be just green, almost paralleling Elizabeth and her green dresses from earlier, but it's always close to him. That red on the inside is close to him somehow. He's wrapped in it, even when the outside seems to be green. And seeing how Elizabeth is behaving towards the creature may have pulled more cruelty out of him as well. He is turning into his father as he beats the beast, as he calls him, and demands to know why it would be afraid of him, his maker. That red, that cruelty, that billowing red of that night robe inside lining, it's showing that inside, that's where Victor's madness lies. He can take the gloves off, he can take the neckerchief off, but it's never going to leave him. It is in him. Much like he said to Harlander, it's spread, the disease has spread, it's all inside you, all your organs are polluted with it. And that's true of Victor's madness as well. Now, there's no anything when he tells the brother of his plans, when they make plans, when he gets the brother and Elizabeth to leave, there is no red in his gloves, there is no red neckerchief, none of that. But when he goes down to see the creature and he says, say one word more, make me save you. And we're going to talk about him not having any responsibility in passing that on to the creature in another video. He pulls those gloves back on afterwards. A mark of him bringing more death. He's delving back into that madness. He is trying to bring death, very deliberately bring death to this creature. And quite cruelly with it as well, he pulls them on and sort of says, and he walks away. He leaves, he sets everything on fire, he's wearing those red gloves, and just red and death and death and death. He is the bringer of death. That is what's happening right now. But very importantly, he is not wearing that red neckerchief, and he never wears it again. And now we move into the creature's tale and that part of the story. And while we don't have Victor in it for the beginning part, the red meaning death and that Dies Irae theme, that is still prominent. So I want to touch on those just really quickly. So the red in this is not to do with Victor and his madness, but it does still symbolize death. Number one, we see red berries that the creature picks and eats and shares with the deer, who immediately gets shot. We then see red in the hem and in the stitching and the embroidered red cross on the blind man who he meets, who befriends him, who of course is going to die. We see that he even picks up a red book right before the wolves arrive, causing more death. Moving back to Victor Frankenstein then, when we next see him, he is completely devoid of red. He describes himself that he has found sanity at a great cost, and this is shown in his lack of red. He doesn't wear the red gloves anymore, the red neckerchief long since gone. He's actually in mostly white, ready for his brother and Elizabeth's wedding. Even the room he is in, he has blue bed sheets. The bed is not red, as we've usually seen him sitting in. He says that the creature is madness calling me back, and perhaps he's right, but he was always going to heed that call, and arguably, it's his own voice calling to him. And through the house, once again, we see in the marble, the red sort of blood stains and splatters through that twisted, twirled marbling effects. Possibly this house really is going to become a house of death. Hint, hint, yes it does. This wedding is doomed, and Victor Frankenstein is the reason why. Elizabeth is shot by his own hand. And then because of this, when Victor blames the creature for Elizabeth's death, his brother is one of the people who runs at the creature and gets flung to the side, cracking his head. He dies because of Victor. Elizabeth dies because of Victor. That red, that blood, that mark marking them for death was always there, and it was his own fault. Even his own brother William says this as he lays dying and bleeding, and his brother says, I can save you, I can save you. William says, from what? From you? All of this, it came from you. And he's right. That madness trickling all the way back to that bloody red handprint on his shoulder because of his mother's death, it's all come from Victor. It all stemmed from him. This madness, this rage, this death. He created life from death, and he has created death and suffering everywhere. Death to those around him and suffering to the creature. And guess what? Those red gloves are back on again as Victor Frankenstein goes to pursue the creature. After all that has happened, he puts the gloves back on. He is going to deal death. He's back in the madness again, but the neckerchief is still gone. Again, it is not about the mother anymore. It's never going to be about the mother. It's always about him and his grief and his obsession and his madness and that death dealing. The blood on his hands, that symbol of red, red, red. The gloves remain on for death. All of it for death. They remain on as he clashes with the creature and he lights that dynamite, and then the gloves are gone for our finale. At last, we're left back in the whites and the greys and the blues, and soon that beautiful gold as the breaking sun dawns. Victor lies clad in white, dying. He has no gloves and no neckerchief. He's no longer bound in grief and death, but he is fading. Now, in the descriptions of the costume design, it says they did use white as a symbol of death as well, and I'm going to look into that in another video because today I wanted to focus on the red of the Dies Irae. And it's interesting that at the end, there isn't any. Of course, we already know it's within him. It's what has driven him. He coughs up blood. That red is definitely within him, and he can't escape that. But in the end, he does have one of only, I would argue, two real and genuine moments, and it's a big mark of how much he has come to look back on his life and realize what he's done wrong, that I believe him, like the creature does when he says, I'm sorry. So completely devoid of red, devoid of that madness driving him, and given this forgiveness in white, bathed in this window, in this dawning light, Victor Frankenstein dies. But what of the creature? He cannot wear the red. He has none of it. None of his maker's madness, no desire to defeat gods, ineptitude, or conquer death. He is devoid of choice, though. He lives and can do nothing more. He was born from death and Frankenstein's red madness, though, so surely there must be some on him somewhere. Well, I think technically yes there is, but it's not on the outside. Some flecks of red are of course visible in his scars and when he bleeds, of course, but really I think the only red that the creature bears is on the inside. As Victor says, he knows the creature's heart because I put it there. He knows this man inside and out, and that's where the red is. More than his organs and blood and muscles, the creature was crafted in grief and pain and rage and madness, and it did go somewhere. I think it's inside him, born into his emotions and his suffering, but gentler than Victor's ever was. The creature carries the remnants of his maker's madness of red, but does not fall to it like Victor did. He holds it because he was made from it, but cannot die, and will not turn into the monster as Frankenstein did. As William said, his brother, Victor Frankenstein, was the monster all along, and this poor creature is not. So, that was my little take on this film. Red as the Dies Irae, marking people who are bound for death, and those who are caught in Frankenstein's madness. Harlander caught the red ball, William wore the red boots, Elizabeth wore the red cross and other red details in her clothing, the blind man had an embroidered red cross, and most importantly of all, the starting point, Victor's mother wore all in red. Her veil, her outfit, her everything, and then her gloves worn by her son, and the red neckerchief that started it all. The bloody handprint that drove his grief to madness, to death, to everything. Grief to rage, and ultimately just so much death. Red, 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 madness and symbolism. What do we think? I think the next video I'm going to do is I'm going to be talking about what does that mirrored final shot mean, and within that I'm going to be talking about parallels and foreshadowing and that kind of thing. So stay tuned for that one, and if there's anything you would like me to talk about, let me know in the comments down below, and have a wonderful day. I hope you've seen this film. If you haven't, please go and watch it. Alright, the end. Goodbye.